You know, not everybody feels this way, but feeling second class is pretty common experience for people in blended families. Even people who have been widowed sometimes tell me they start talking about the complexities of their life, and other people kind of look at them like there's something wrong with them and they feel judged. As a matter of fact, I would suggest there are people who are not in your group right now, people in your church who did not come and be a part of this because they're hiding. They'd rather be invisible with their story. They hate feeling judged, so they just disconnect. Others walk into church each week, put on a good front. You know, we all do that. We kind of put on our Sunday clothes and appear pristine and well-kept as if everything in our life is going just fine. But in reality, we don't feel perfect. We struggle day to day with real life stuff and relationships. Listen, God's people aren't perfect, and they never have been. Do you remember the story of Jacob in the Bible? Wow, this is really something. He grew up in this family where his mom, you ready for this? His mom colluded with him to steal his older brother's blessing from their dad. And it worked. Esau, Jacob's older brother, when he finds out about it, he wants revenge. Jacob doesn't know what to do, so he runs to his uncle Laban's house, right? His mom tells him, just go to your uncle Laban and just stay there until your brother calms down, right? Well, that's when the story really gets crazy. He falls in love with Rachel, Uncle Laban's daughter. Yes, I know it's weird, that's his cousin, but it's in the Bible, right? Another weird part of this story. And he's gonna eventually work off the bride price so he can win Rachel's heart in marriage. But 7 years later, when he's worked off the bride price and it's time for the wedding, Uncle Laban sneaks in Leah, Rachel's older sister, as the bride. Is this crazy or what? Can you imagine at that point him going to Uncle Laban saying, what are you doing to me? And I thought we had a deal. I worked for you 7 years. You're gonna give me Rachel's hand in marriage, and you sneak Leah in as the bride? This is terrible. I don't want Leah, I want Rachel. By the way, can you imagine being Leah in this story? This is the story of Jacob in the Bible. Like, he's a really important character in the life of God's people. Like, Jesus is related to this guy, right? This is an important story, and they are messed up. Well, let me tell you, the story doesn't get any better. Because then what happens is Uncle Laban says, yeah, you can have Rachel's hand in marriage, but you got to work for me another 7 years. I mean, when you hear stories like this, you have to feel better about your life, right? Let's watch Jesse and David.
When David and I first got together, he had 3 kiddos. I had none, and I never wanted kids. So I always had this perspective of, you're the parent. I was very hands-off. I let him make all the parenting decisions.
She didn't want to grab the reins and start steering one way or the other, and I was happy to do that because I was trying to avoid the conflict.
It was definitely difficult on the marriage. I would hold on to a little resentment against David. You know, why aren't you parenting like I think you should parent? And then God came in the picture. So we did not know the Lord when we first met. And in 2014, we came to know the Lord.
I started to see her just getting in God's word, just allowing that to permeate her, affect her decisions.
I think I was praying for my family, for my kids, and I realized I hadn't been a parent to my step-kiddos, and that's what I needed to be. And not only did I need to be a parent to them, but I needed to come alongside my husband. That's what a loving family looks like.
At first, when we started co-parenting together, it really was difficult. It really was just disjointed. You know, I'm over here saying, let's do this. Jesse's over here saying, well, I think we need to do it this way. And we're both giving mixed signals to our children. It took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of communication between me and her, discussing and being on the same page of, hey, we're going to do this for our family. Let's move together, even though we know there's going to be some pushback right now.
It looks like responding instead of reacting. It looks like communication, lots of communication, and really presenting both of our perspectives and understanding that we both have different experiences. We're able to bring those perspectives to the table And it looks like a lot more prayer, a lot more prayer, and really collaborating to make the best decisions for whatever that particular scenario is.
You know, now it's almost 180. Now we're in a situation where I'm super thankful for the partnership that we have. Whereas before, we're operating as two individuals with two unique and distinct plans and where we want to go. Now we have a joint vision on where we want to take our family. So there's just been a dramatic shift and change in how we operate.
You know, honestly, most adults work too hard to bring their family together. They weren't really even trying. But God got a hold of them, changed their hearts, opened their eyes to what love could do, and they started walking in obedience. They stepped up to discover a redemptive God who began redeeming their family story. And the cool thing is that shame didn't even really get in the way. It does for most. I was doing a seminar one time. We paused, took a break, and this guy came running up the aisle, and he had something he wanted to say to me. And he said, "What do I do about the D and the R?" And he pointed to his forehead, and I'm like, "Dude, I don't see a D, and I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "The D and the R tattooed on my forehead, divorced and remarried." You know, he started talking about how he left his first wife in rebellion towards God and hurt her and hurt his kids and did some really horrible things, and he knew the consequences were still rolling out for all of them. And he left God, and he finally came back to the Lord, and he's found another woman. They're married, and they're at this seminar because they want to be a healthy, strong family, and they want to lead well. And he's going, "But I can't shake my past. Like, I walk into church, and everybody knows that I did some bad stuff, and I'm divorced, and I'm remarried, and I can't change that. And I feel like people judge me for it. What do I do about the D and the R?" So I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "Look, I get it. I hate to say it, but you're not the only one. This happens to a lot of people. You do get judged. You do get treated differently. And sometimes we say things at church that just make you feel like you're so unworthy of being in the room. But God doesn't feel this way about you." I said, "You know, the D and the R, you think it means divorced and remarried, but in God's economy, I think it means delivered and redeemed." You see, your imperfection is not a problem for God. You're not a second-class Christian because there's no such thing as a first-class Christian. There's just sinners who need a cross. I know you can't change your past or the consequences that you and others perhaps experience today because of the past. And maybe you still have business to do with God about your past. If you do, let me just encourage you to talk with someone about it. There may be something to confess or repent of or apologize for. But even then, once you've done all of that work, you still can't change your past. But if you let God wrap your story into His redemptive narrative, then you can change the story you tell about your past. Let me say that again. You can't change your past, but you can change the story you tell about your past. Who you were then becomes a testimony to the kindness of God. That's what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2 and first 10 verses. We become a testimony to the kindness of God. You are redeemed, forgiven, made new, a child of God. So here's the thing. Act like it. Stop hiding in your shame. You know, that shame has been lifted. Stop putting on clothes to appear pristine. Like you can be authentic with who you are and vulnerable about your story, because it's really not your story anymore. It's God's story and what He's doing through Christ in you, how He's forgiving you and redeeming your story. Yes, there's complexity. Yes, there's consequence. And yes, God's people from time to time will treat you differently because of your past. I wish that weren't true, but it is. But that is not your God. In His eyes, you are delivered and redeemed. There's one more thing. You know, your story that is a testimony to the kindness of God is really powerful for others who also think that they have to put on the pretty clothes and hide in shame. Alicia and Brandon are going to share their story with you here in just a second. If it blesses you, remember this: your story will bless somebody else.
Before Brandon and I got married, I actually just went through a really guilt-filled divorce. I was very involved in church. I mean, I grew up in church, and I never got married to get divorced. So whenever it failed, I felt like a failure. I mean, I didn't go to church for like a year, and I definitely felt the void. There was a time where I felt like, am I even worth being loved? Am I even worth like feeling love again?
After my divorce, I felt remorse. At the time, I wasn't a Christian, and there was this like blanket on me of hopelessness. I didn't know really what my purpose was at that time besides being a provider for my kids. When I met Alicia, we had both experienced the divorce, and so we were kind of, helping each other out on that. At the time, we were just dating, but she just expressed her concern about, I'm missing something in my life, and I need to get back in church and be back in community. And I didn't hesitate. I knew that there was something missing in my life. I just didn't know what it was at that time. We started attending church, and I became a Christian, and for me it was a brand new world.
So at our church, there was an opportunity to lead connect groups. And so we had talked about it, and I was like, let's just do it.
A preconceived notion that I had about the church is that, you have to have everything clean and your life straight. And because of our divorce, we thought that we were going to get judged, or they were going to say, you can't lead here because you've been divorced. But actually, it was just the opposite. There was already a spot for us where we could step into that leadership role and, have a connect group of our own.
That first day of our connect group, we had like 6 couples, 5 of which were blended families. After our first group, I'm hearing all these stories, and I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, yeah, that's me. And like, oh, that's what I've been through. You're divorced, I'm divorced too. Through that, God showed me like, this is how much I love you. You can have a second chance, and you can make a difference, and you can, help other people who might have been on the same, path that you were on, feeling like lonely. I think it just shows that God is, He is the Redeemer.
Wow, Alicia and Brandon, what a journey, right? Sense of failure and shame, and God brings them out of that, redeems their story, and now they're blessing other people. Okay, it's time for you to have a little discussion and process this, and be thinking about how maybe God can redeem your story and be a blessing to others.